This feels like a good time as any to say, Happy Pride Month, y'all. Wow, I'm really saying that as I'm recording on the 29th of June, basically the end of the month. That's evil of me. So, Silky and Irene's comeback. This was a project that I was pleasantly surprised to have seen after my social media break ended, and I immediately jumped on the opportunity to listen to what they had in store. Unfortunately, I don't have anything super groundbreaking to say in regards to the music itself. I enjoyed the mini album. Overall, it was a pretty decent release. The title track, Tilt, was cute, and would have been even better if it wasn't for the chorus. An anti-drop in 2025 feels extremely dated, not to mention boring. No, the more interesting conversation I saw develop, again retroactively, was the discussion around possible queer baiting in the album's promotion. A topic that, I should mention, took place in a pretty niche part of the fandom and wasn't the overwhelming reaction to the project's release. I don't want to make this seem like it was a bigger thing than it actually was. But it was an interesting enough take, and one that I didn't have a definitive rebuttal to at first. For those completely unaware, queerbaiting refers to a tactic used to attract a queer audience by interjecting queer subtext into a character or between two characters in close proximity to one another, only to pull back before ever confirming anything, usually to avoid alienating more conservative parts of the audience. My gut reaction to the accusation of queerbaiting in this instance was to explain how queerbaiting is in fact a literary term, one reserved for books, movies, and TV. It is not a term that can be used to describe real people. If there ever was an instance of a real-life person trying to imply their sexuality goes beyond just being straight, for the sake of notoriety or clout, that would not be queerbaiting. That would be an third evil thing. But then my mind got to thinking, can that really be said about idols? Now, I'm not dragging Irene and Silky into the conversation yet. Just in general, how true is it to say that idols are truly representative of themselves? I'm of course referring to the myriad of industry-old tactics that companies have used to construct their groups. From forcing members to embody certain personalities and demeanors, to assigning them visual identities, speech habits, and even hobbies. Idol personas are notoriously curated, and while it is commonly believed that this sort of heavy-handed management isn't as prevalent today, we can't say for sure how much of that image building still quietly persists. This is a big reason why people tell you not to take idols at face value. Not because they're lying, although that can certainly be the case sometimes, but because the version of themselves you see might not be entirely theirs to begin with. So when someone says real people can't queerbait, they're usually not accounting for the blurred line that exists in K-pop. Idols aren't just people, as much as I would love for that to be the case. In the eyes of the domestic audience, and some fans outside of Korea, if we're being honest, they're seen as products, characters, and occasionally spoke models, and marketed by their companies as such. The company's willingness to parade idols as accessible as possible is a big part of why so many fans feel justified in how parasocial they act. But this idea can actually be shown in a much less dehumanizing and demoralizing way. Take music videos, for instance. Idols are almost never portraying themselves. One of the most common themes in music, and especially in K-pop, is love, despite the fact that idols are often expected to maintain the illusion of being perpetually single. These narratives can also serve different purposes. Sometimes they're used to build intricate lore, like with Billy, or to fit into more conceptual or sci-fi settings, like aespa used to do. The point is, what we're watching is performance. Fiction. It's not meant to reflect the artist's personal life. Now just add in the undeniable appeal of idol pairings. Whether romantic or platonic, certain member dynamics can catch the public's attention, and companies absolutely take note. Member combinations and their perceived chemistry are a huge part of fan culture and marketing. It's likely one of the core reasons why Irene and Silky were paired as a subunit in the first place. If fans already love seeing them together, then what better way to further monetize their relationship than by selling more content of it? Just for the sake of clarity before continuing, because I know this is a sensitive topic, I do want to make it clear here that I do not believe idols should be treated this way. I am not endorsing the idea that they are just characters or products. While they do put on performances, They are real people in reality. But it would also be dishonest to pretend that this isn't how the industry often presents them. The idol system thrives on projection, and within that structure, it becomes increasingly difficult to distinguish real people from curated personas. So, when it comes to Irene and Silky, the question arises yet again. Can this be considered queerbaiting if the real people can't queerbait argument doesn't hold up under the weight of K-pop's performative model? Surprisingly, my answer is still no. And to explain that, we have to return to the actual criteria that defines queerbaiting. To be considered queerbait, 3 requirements have to be met. Number 1, it needs to be fictional. Check. We've already discussed this. Number 2, queer subtext needs to be present. Also check. If it wasn't, this wouldn't even be a conversation in the first place. And number 3, there has to be no fulfillment on that subtext. This is where I believe the queerbaiting argument falls apart. So to go back to my music video argument, tilt is not subtle. The music video very clearly tells a story centered on a romantic, emotionally complex relationship between 2 women. There is literally no man in sight. And the rest of the mini album follows that same theme. There is literally a track called Girl Next Door. The queerness presented in the music video teasers, especially that one promotional image that got taken down because people thought that it was female genitalia. The queerness in this instance isn't incidental, it is purposeful, but it is also not background texture. It is the story. Sure, nothing is spelled out explicitly. We do not get to see Irene and Silky making out on screen or something. But it doesn't need to be. The characters played by Irene and Silky are in a love and hate but fate relationship. Those are quite literally the lyrics. But just because this isn't queerbaiting doesn't mean we're out of murky waters. While the story itself is pretty fucking gay, it is still being used, strategically, to promote a commercial product. But as someone online best put it, consider me queer and baited. And I think that phrasing nails the contradiction so many people are trying to express. Queerbaiting, in the strictest sense, may not apply here, but the album is still using queerness to generate interest and profit. As much as I try to explain things in the simplest sense here, I don't think any of this has truly gone over anybody's head, especially queer fans. If anything, the opposite is true. Queer people are hyper-aware of the implications. We know what it means when queerness is allowed to be visually portrayed but not verbally acknowledged. We know what it means to see a sapphic relationship dramatized on scene without so much as a word of real-life support from the idols themselves. And yet, a lot of us still support it. Not out of naivete, but because even this kind of coded representation feels better than nothing. While it's not great, it still feels like a step in the right direction. It's a mirror. Blurry and distorted, sure, but still a reflection of something rarely allowed to surface. That contradiction makes people feel uneasy, and I don't judge anyone who feels unnerved by the commodification of queerness. While I personally enjoyed this release, I'm not going to pretend that it is without flaw in the moral sense. Another thing to remember, just for fans out there, is that it's not about Irene and Silky personally. I don't want this to be like an attack on them. Chances are they had very little to say in terms of the development of this concept. Maybe they resonated with it, maybe they wanted to tell this story. Maybe they couldn't give 2 shits about it. I don't know because I don't know them, and that is the point. But that doesn't change the fact that it likely wasn't their idea. So, in conclusion, I don't think this release was queerbaiting, but I do think it's an example of queerness being commodified by a system that sees it as a trend. Sees a lot of things as a trend. One that I'm surprised is still being represented given the rise in anti-woke sentiment these past few years. I mean, we're seeing a revival of blatant anti-blackness in K-pop. For those paying attention, it never really went away, but now it's just non-stop in our faces. Anyway, that'll be it from me for now. See y'all later. Bye-bye!